Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something really cool, a collaboration between a football fan named Aydın Tiryaki and an AI. And what they're doing is completely changing what it means to watch a game. Seriously, we're not just talking about being a fan anymore, we're talking about actually shaping the sport itself.
Okay, let's start with a feeling I think every single sports fan out there knows, right? You're on the couch, you're watching the game, and the ref makes a terrible call. Or maybe the team's tactics are just so boring, and you find yourself yelling at the screen, thinking, come on, I could do better than this.
Well, what if you actually could? This whole explainer is about a new methodology that takes all that fan frustration and channels it into something really productive. It's about a total shift in mindset, from just sitting back and watching to becoming an active game designer. The idea is to use those 90 minutes of a match as your own personal lab for new ideas.
And the core idea? It's actually pretty simple, but man, is it powerful. Imagine just talking to an AI while you're watching the game. Suddenly, that match becomes this amazing, multi-layered experience. It's not just entertainment anymore. You're brainstorming, you're creating content. You might even be practicing another language, all at the same time. So you're probably wondering, how does this actually work in practice? Let's dive into the creative process that Aydın Tiryaki came up with. It's this really fascinating mix of, that human creative spark and a surprisingly structured system. Okay, so here's the whole methodology, broken down into 6 steps. It all starts with what he calls a spark moment. Something happens on the field that just triggers an idea. Right away, step 2, you start a voice chat with the AI, completely hands-free. Step 3 is the inductive method, where you go from that one specific moment to a much bigger idea. Then comes the really cool part, step 4, idea tennis. It's basically a back-and-forth debate with the AI to really sharpen the concept. After that, step 5, the AI drafts up a whole article for you to approve. And finally, step 6, global reach, where the whole thing gets adapted into English for the rest of the world to see. And honestly, that 4th step is the secret sauce. It's the real heart of this whole system. This dialectical discussion is where the magic happens. You have a thesis, your idea. The AI gives you the antithesis, the counterargument, and together you get to the synthesis. It's how a rough thought gets hammered into a solid, strong concept. And calling it idea tennis, that's just perfect. So let's really break down what a match of idea tennis looks like. The human, that's you, serves up a creative idea, maybe a new rule or a tactical change. Then the AI fires back a return. But it's not just any return, it's a reality check. It'll bring up historical examples, potential problems, and the official rulebook. The IFAB standards that run the whole sport. So then you have to volley back, finding creative ways around those problems. And with every shot, back and forth, the idea just gets stronger and stronger until it's a fully fledged concept. Okay, so that's the human's role. But what about the AI? You've got to understand, it's not just a passive tool here. Not at all. It's an active partner in this dance, a real collaborator. Let's flip the script and look at the AI's side of the equation. This whole thing is a perfect example of a concept called augmented intelligence. And the name says it all, right? The goal isn't for AI to replace us, it's to augment us, to make us better. You take human creativity and that gut intuition, you pair it with the AI's massive analytical power, and bam, you get something that neither one could ever create alone. And I love this analogy here. It really breaks down the partnership. The human is the visionary architect. They're the one with the big, crazy, brilliant ideas. The one who spots a flaw in the game that nobody else sees. But then you have the AI as the chief engineer. It's the one that comes in and says, okay, that's a great idea, but will it actually work? It grounds the vision in data, in facts, and in the actual rules of the game. So when you boil it down, the AI is really playing 4 key roles here. First, it's your sparring partner. It plays devil's advocate to make your ideas tougher. Second, it's a knowledge manager, basically building a personal football constitution based on all your past chats. Third, it's your ghostwriter and quality controller, giving your ideas a professional structure and, well, a bit of soul. And finally, it's a language expert, making sure your ideas can actually compete on the world stage. Okay, so we've got the process, we've got the human-AI partnership, but what's the end game here? What does all this actually produce? Let's trace the journey of one single idea, from a fleeting thought in the middle of a match all the way to its final, polished form. Picture this. It all starts with just a few scattered thoughts. Our user, Tiryaki, is watching the game, he spots some kind of tactical logjam on the field, and he just speaks his idea out loud, in his native Turkish. He doesn't have to stop watching, he doesn't have to grab a notepad or pull out his phone. His eyes stay glued to the action.
And from that moment, the AI just takes the ball and runs with it. First, it steps in as a ghostwriter, taking those raw, spoken thoughts and weaving them into a structured, professional article. Then, and this is a really clever step, it performs an auditory test. It literally reads the draft back to you so you can hear how it flows. Finally, it adapts the whole piece for a global audience. And this isn't just a simple translation, it's a complete rewrite.
And this is where you see the real power of that final step. The AI doesn't just translate the words, it adopts the persona of a seasoned international sports writer. It starts using all the right terminology, phrases like clean sheet or box-to-box midfielder. And that's not just for show. Using that specific jargon is absolutely critical if you want your ideas to be taken seriously and earn respect in the global football world.
So, what's the big takeaway here? It's that a 90-minute football match is completely transformed. It's no longer just a passive way to spend an afternoon. It becomes this hyper-efficient creative engine. You've got entertainment, brainstorming, actual content creation, and language practice all rolled into one. It's amazing.
Ultimately, this isn't just about a football, is it? This whole model is basically a blueprint for human-AI collaboration that could be applied almost anywhere. And it really leaves you with a big question. If this partnership can so radically change how we see a simple sport, what's the next lab? What other industry, what other field is just waiting for this kind of fusion between human vision and AI to come in and create something we've never seen before?
Okay, let's unpack this. We've all been there, right? You're watching a game, any sport, really, and you just see a terrible call.
Oh, absolutely. The armchair expert comes out immediately.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or, a tactic that just feels so completely outdated, and you start critiquing it, you're venting, you're texting your friends about how unfair it all is. But what if that flash of frustration wasn't just, noise? What if that immediate gut reaction was actually the start of a process, a really formalized, structured process to redesign the game itself?
That mental shift that's the entire foundation of what we're looking at today. This is a deep dive into a really fascinating collaboration. It's led by a researcher named Aydın Tiryaki and his digital partner, the AI model Gemini 3 Pro.
Aydın Tiryaki, right.
And together they figured out how to turn the passive act of watching a 90-minute football match into what our source material calls a high-efficiency idea generation workshop. It's basically a game design lab.
So the source we're analyzing is called the Football Lab, how it works. It's an excerpt that really details this methodology, this merger of, on one hand, creative human intuition.
Aydın Tiryaki's insight.
Right. And on the other, the cold, hard, analytical power of artificial intelligence.
Yep.
It's a perfect case study in what's called augmented intelligence.
And our mission today is to go a bit beyond just, defining this system. We really need to get under the hood and understand the gears and springs of this engine for innovation. We're asking, how do you build the system that guarantees your best ideas, even the most fleeting ones, are captured, tested, and then professionally published?
So here's the big question for you, the listener, as you follow along today. If this highly structured approach can turn a leisure activity, something like watching soccer, into a content and innovation engine, how can you apply this same framework to your own passive activities? Think about your commute or listening to talks or just reading industry news. Could that become your own structured system for innovation?
It's a great question. And it really has to start with that fundamental mindset change.
So let's begin there. The vision itself.
The initial vision is just so powerful because it demands this complete transformation of what it means to be a spectator. Aydın Tiryaki elevates watching football from just, a passive act of entertainment to an active mental process that shapes the rules and the future of the game.
It's an intellectual commitment. You're moving from just seeing a flaw to immediately starting the process of fixing the underlying mechanism that allowed it.
Right. And that process has to be precise. It has to start with what the source calls the spark moment or the trigger.
The trigger. Okay, so what does that actually mean?
It's essential. The trigger means that a specific, maybe frustrating event on the field, let's say a player wastes a minute feigning an injury or a VAR review for offside takes forever. You don't treat that as a one-off thing.
It's not just a random incident.
No, not at all. It has to be seen immediately as a symptom, as a trigger that identifies a specific flaw in the general theory of football.
Okay, I see. So instead of just shouting, "That's a terrible call," at the screen, you're prompted to think, okay, what institutional rule or maybe lack of a rule, made that call possible? And how can we systemically fix it?
That's the leap. That's the difference between just venting and actually generating a thesis. Now, the genius part, the technical part, is how seamless they make this mental leap. And it all relies on something they call simultaneous voice interaction.
Which means you're using the AI's voice mode. You're literally talking to Gemini 3 Pro without ever pausing the match, without looking at a screen. Your eyes stay on the action, but your mind is simultaneously dictating ideas to the AI.
That simultaneous part is critical for speed, for authenticity. When you see a flaw, the analysis has to be instant. If you stop to type something out,
You lose the moment, the energy's gone, the detail is lost.
Exactly. But, I mean, I have to ask the skeptical question here. If you're relying just on voice during a loud, dynamic sporting event, aren't you going to get a ton of transcription errors, a data cleanup nightmare?
That's a really good question, and I think that's the voice of the listener right there.
Yeah.
The source implies that the quality of the AI model itself, this Gemini 3 Pro, is key. It needs to have really robust, real-time, context-aware processing. It's not just transcribing words. It's trying to instantly categorize the thoughts, even with crowd noise in the background, just so the exchange is, legible enough to get the process started.
That makes sense. It doesn't need perfect grammar. It needs immediate context capture. And that rapid capture then leads to the next phase, the inductive method. The conversation, which was kicked off by that one little moment, quickly moves beyond the specific match.
It generalizes.
It starts forming these deeper general headings, things like justice in the game, the entertainment factor, sustainability.
Right, so it turns a micro-observation, like the ref, adding 5 minutes of stoppage time, into a huge macro discussion. Is our current system for timekeeping actually sustainable for player health or for viewer engagement? The focus shifts from 5 minutes to reforming the entire time structure of the game. This is where it gets really interesting for me. This is where the human-AI partnership really comes to life. So once you have that broad idea, how is it stress tested? It doesn't sound like the system puts up with half-baked concepts.
Oh, it definitely doesn't. This is the heart of the whole methodology. It's step 4, the dialectical discussion, which the source brilliantly calls idea tennis.
Idea tennis. I love that.
It's the engine room where these raw ideas are forced to mature. So the user, Aydın Tiryaki, he proposes an idea. That's the thesis.
And the AI, which is now acting as this thinking partner, it instantly comes back with counterarguments, risks, historical failures, the antithesis.
Exactly. Let's just run a quick hypothetical. So Tiryaki sees some extreme time wasting and dictates, thesis, we should adopt a 60-minute stop clock system, like in basketball.
Okay.
The AI doesn't just go, great idea, it hits the ball back hard. It acts as the chief engineer.
So its counter-argument, the antithesis, would be purely analytical. I would say something like antithesis. Historical data shows stop clock games often lose fluidity. Also, IFAB standards prioritize continuous flow, so this might face huge resistance from traditionalists, and it could even extend the total game time past the broadcast window.
Precisely that. It pulls from its entire knowledge base historical data, the official rulebook, IFAB standards, just to poke holes in the idea. Now the human has to respond creatively to those really fundamental objections.
And that's the synthesis.
That's the synthesis. Tiryaki might come back with, okay, synthesis. Instead of a full stop clock, what if we use a hybrid model? Time only stops after a goal or a substitution, but not for throw-ins. That might balance flow with fairness.
That back and forth, that idea tennis, that is the perfect definition of augmented intelligence. It's this flawless collaboration where the human, the visionary architect, brings this new intuitive idea, and the AI, the chief engineer, provides the analytical constraint and the data to back it up.
The AI isn't there to replace the visionary. It's there to save the visionary from, frankly, embarrassing flaws or impractical ideas.
Right.
It forces the idea to reach its absolute strongest, most defensible form by playing devil's advocate.
It's basically stopping the user from submitting a kind of fantasy football rule change to a serious international body. It asks all the hard questions. Why did this fail in the 1970s? Is it even technically possible with current broadcast tech? It injects that necessary rigor into what is at its heart a very creative process.
And that rigor is what separates this from just, a casual brainstorming session. Only the ideas that can survive that barrage of data and practical constraints get to move on.
So let's talk more about the chief engineer, the AI's role. It's do more than just arguing, right?
Oh, much more. It's performing these vital background tasks that ensure the whole thing is productive long-term. And it starts with building what you could call an institutional memory.
which is absolutely crucial. If you're innovating every single week, you need a system that remembers what you tried last time and, more importantly, why it didn't work, so you don't just go over the same old ground.
That's the core of what the source calls cumulative knowledge management. The AI systematically retains all the refined topics and, crucially, the arguments that were developed during past matches. The whole system builds on its former gains.
So over an entire football season, you're building this massive, personalized knowledge base. The source actually calls it a personal football constitution, or corpus.
It's more than just a simple archive of documents. It's an interactive memory. If Tiryaki proposes a concept today, the AI can instantly recall and even cite his own rejection of a similar, less developed idea from 3 weeks ago. It forces him to address his past critique. The corpus itself actively makes the AI's argument stronger over time.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
So the quality of the interaction is constantly improving. But, I mean, after 90 minutes of this rapid-fire voice dictation and idea tennis, the human output must be pretty fragmented.
Oh, for sure. No matter how valuable the ideas are, they're going to be scattered. And that's where the AI steps in for ghostwriting and quality control.
Okay, so its job is not just to summarize.
Not at all. It's about providing structure. It takes all these raw, scattered thoughts from the voice files, and it structures them into a professional article with a clear intro, a well-supported body, and a decisive conclusion.
And the source makes a really key point here. It says the AI adds a sector-specific soul and seriousness to the text. What does that actually look like? How does it make a raw dictation sound like a serious academic contribution instead of just a rant?
It's all about changing the register and the vocabulary. So, for instance, if the user said something like, the team was really unlucky in front of the net, they just kept missing, the AI refines that thought. It might rephrase it as something like, the team's low XG or expected goals output suggests a strategic stagnation in the midfield third, indicating a systemic failure to penetrate the final defensive line with sufficient quality of opportunity.
I see. So it moves from an emotional observation to a very clinical, analytical statement. It makes sure the language matches the seriousness of the subject.
Exactly. And then there's one final crucial check for clarity. Once the article is all structured, the AI performs what's called the auditory test. It actually reads the whole text aloud to the user.
That's such a simple but brilliant filter. If a really sophisticated technical argument sounds clunky or confusing when you hear it spoken, then the flow is wrong.
Right. And it goes back for an edit. It's the final quality check to ensure the delivery is as good as the concept itself.
Okay, so we've got the idea generation, the refinement. It's been challenged by the chief engineer. It's been ghost-written into a professional article. But the source language here is Turkish. So how does an idea that's conceived in a local context get any traction in the global football world where English really dominates the conversation?
This step is, it's fundamental to the whole thing working. The source calls this the user's most critical move. It's the adaptation of that approved Turkish text into English for the world to see.
And we know that a simple, direct machine translation almost always fails, especially with technical subjects like sports analysis where all the nuance and jargon really matter.
Absolutely. So the AI doesn't do a literal translation. It performs a specialized rewriting technique. It essentially has to assume the persona of an international sports writer.
Okay, so that means it has to master all the sophisticated football jargon, make sure the tone is authoritative, culturally relevant,
And instantly recognizable to international analysts or governing bodies. The right terminology is really a gateway to being taken seriously. If you misuse basic English jargon, a reader might just dismiss the depth of your analysis before they even finish the first paragraph.
That makes perfect sense. You have to use clean sheet instead of 0 goals allowed or box-to-box midfielder, not a player who runs a lot.
Exactly. The AI eliminates those language errors that could otherwise completely undermine a brilliant idea. It's all about making sure the concept is judged purely on its merit, on its rigor, not on its linguistic presentation.
The end result is just so dynamic. You have this process that intertwines passive entertainment with critical brainstorming, professional content creation, and even language practice, all in one hyper-efficient experience. It really does transform a local perspective into a voice of international standard.
It truly maximizes the productivity of that 90-minute window. It leverages the AI for structure, for critique, for memory, and for global amplification.
You know, the core lesson here seems to be the power of having a structured, almost adversarial thinking system. If you connect this to the bigger picture, the idea of having a digital thinking partner that instantly tests your gut feelings against feasibility, against history, against professional standards, that feels revolutionary.
It's not just for sports. Imagine applying this idea tennis framework to, say, a quarterly business strategy or a new scientific hypothesis.
Right.
This methodology really provides a blueprint for continuous innovation. It trains your mind to move instantly from just recognizing a flaw, that spark moment, to formulating a concrete, defensible, and professionally articulated solution.
Which brings us back to that question for you. If augmented intelligence can turn watching a soccer game into an engine for genuine publishable sports innovation, what high-frequency, common daily activity are you currently viewing passively that could be transformed into your own high-efficiency laboratory? Think about that trigger that's just waiting to happen in your daily routine and what kind of constitution you could start building today.